I've lived quite some years. I don't know how many of you are here with my age, but I'm beyond 65. And with that comes some experience. They say the older you grow, the more experience you have, and nobody needs it because age disqualifies you. But that can be passed on. Now, how was life then? He was able to kumbuka. I think possibly because we were few, and each one was concerned about the other's welfare, things were easier. And offenses had consequences. There was nothing that was excused. If you offended, if you stole, if you did something that was offensive, you had consequences with it. There was no bribing on the road. We were talking about, like last week, I was caught over driving. I mean, over speeding. Is it over driving or over speeding? Speeding. 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 And of course they now make it that you are criminal. Once you are caught over speeding or speeding, you are criminal, which was not there before. Before you would be written a cheat, and then you go and pay. You admit it, you sign, you go and pay. But these days, it's not. Why? Because these days, people are missing money, bribery, and so they decided, let's make it a bit more difficult to pay. And because they make it more difficult, all the money that they get from the road don't end up in the government, it ends up in their pockets. Now, that's how it was. What is it? Is enhancing or helping to enhance corruption. And the other thing was that even the matatu drivers in the roads, they have no rules. Why? Because half of those matatus are owned by the very policemen. And so they do it with impunity. You won't catch them. You see them and there's nothing you can do. What has gone wrong? What has gone wrong between those days and these days? Because people are getting away with some consequences. And people don't want the real rules that make for governance, that make for harmonious existence. Because if you remove that from the police, you're cutting off their money, their income, their bread. That's what they are used to. And apparently they are sent from top to the bottom. They are told, given targets. And if you don't meet the targets, you're not a good policeman. And so there's that used to be, there's that is now just degrading and going down the drain. Just those are a few examples that all day can give a comparison. But as one who grew up in religion, in this case the Christian religion, it is not the law enforcement agencies that control a human being. Because human beings, unless they have the fear of God, the Creator, they are law unto themselves. And I personally would be like any of those. Nothing would stop me from bribing if I can make a few more shillings. Nothing would stop me from being a criminal if that's a shortcut to wealth, as people claim. They don't want to work, but they want to make wealth. But what controls human beings is the Creator who created us and unless you have that, even human value you would not consider. God the Creator. God the Creator gave laws and rules of how we can exist harmoniously and live long on earth. In the Christian religion, we have the 10 commandments that the Creator gave to man. And within those, you find all the world values that are kept by man are based on that values that God handed down. And offenders who breach the commandments are not offending man, but they are offending the Creator who created and gave them down to us. So that even if the consequences are not apparent today, God Himself who created and gave those commands will provide the results or the consequences of offending Him. So that helps us to realize that it's not when I offend you, it's not you or the police or law enforcement that will act on me. It's God who will deal with me. And He's very serious to fall in the hands of a living God, as they say. You repay. So it's not I repay indirectly from God who made those commandments and gave them to us so that we can live long and live harmoniously with each other. And that same God made us social beings. In everything that God created, whether man or planets, you can use the universe, the planets, the sun, the moon, Mars. They were created interdependently. They are interdependent, just as we are interdependent social beings. If you remove even the moon where it is right now, you would cause havoc to the earth. If you removed Mars, this planet called Mars, and any other, if you just interfered with the universal arrangement, you would interfere with man, because the pull, the gravitational pull puts the earth where it is, and if that is not there, the earth will collapse and fall, and anything that God created, you'd find that it's gone. So when God created, He does not create one thing, He creates everything that He has interdependent. We are interdependent with each other. Remove one and you won't exist. There are people who say, leave me alone. If God removed all of us and left you alone, you would be mad. You know, there are people who feel that if I remove this person, if I remove these people, I'll be better off. If God did that, the Creator, you would not even survive a day. My sister, suppose you said, I want to be left alone to do my own thing. And God killed everybody and left you on planet Earth. What would you do? You'd actually go mad. You go somewhere, there is nobody. You run here, nobody. You do what? You are alone. That is to tell you that we were created social beings. We were created interdependent of each other. We are created to live harmoniously with each other. And to do that, there had to be laws and rules of how we can survive together and live long together and live harmoniously together. And that we also see from God's creation, the Creator who created us, and demands that we live in certain values. We don't call them constitution. God's laws are constitutional, but they are values that we live by if we want to live long, if we want to be in favor with God and with man. Okay? So that we go by that for our own good. That means that God has also given each one of us We don't derive our value from what we do. We don't derive our value from where we are. We derive our value from God. That's the first thing. And the same God has given us various tasks. One of the greatest tasks is work. You know, people think that work was a curse. God didn't say that work was a curse. Before God gave man a wife, he gave him work to do. That's according to the Bible. And work, if you don't have work, you are unfulfilled. That's why people go job seeking. That's why people want to work. That's why everybody wants to work, because God has created in us a capacity to be creative and work like he does and like he did. Without work, first I said, without each other, you won't survive. Second, without work, you won't survive. Now, what happens in the first, without each other? In the first, people hate each other because they don't want each other. But without each other, you won't survive. Secondly, people don't want to work. They want to earn without work. They want to have money without work. Or the easiest way that they can make it in life, shortcuts. But God made work to be a fulfilling thing. That when you don't work, you feel empty. You feel valueless. You feel unfulfilled. Because it's God who did it. It was not a curse. The only curse that came with work was sweat. And the Bible says that without sweat, you can't eat. So we eat because we work. And it says those who don't work, let them not eat. However, there is work that is done by the mind, the mental work. And there is work that is done physically. Whether it is physical work or mental work is all part of God's intention for us to work hard with each other so that we have fulfillment. But with that work, for every value, man shuns it. You know, we try to shun every value that God has given us, and I've said there are consequences that come with it, because those who don't want to work want to earn, want to be rich, want to be to make it in life with very little work that they do. When you use only the mental capacity to do work, and suppose you just sit in the office and you write your things and go back to the car and go home and eat and sleep, people have discovered that produces certain consequences within their health. And so the men and women whom you envy, that they just use their mind and they earn more money, are now spending the money they earn to take to the gym so that it seems they are working with their body. Because they are preaching God's commandment. Without sweat, don't do what? Without sweat, there is no food. You don't eat. So if you use only mind to eat, there are consequences. Even you find diseases that are coming at men in suits and offices and blue collar have to sweat. And how do they sweat? They use the money they are earning to go to the gym in order to sweat, in order to eat. So, we are saying, what am I saying? Since work is honorable, there is no need to look down on any work I hear people say that's below my dignity. And I visited a country where the people who have learned, gone to school, and they have PhDs are sweeping the streets and paving ways and paving and removing dirt, you know. And it's not that because they have PhDs, some work is below their dignity. This is the problem that we have. We group other works, KYMs, as people who didn't go to school and their work is below our dignity. You know, we look at some things and we desire, when I go to school, when I earn my PhD, when I earn my, you will not see me digging. Let me tell you, you will dig in the gym. You will dig, but you'll dig where? In the gym. So, work is supposed to be a productive means of enhancing our life. Religion, in this matter, is the best avenue to instill values in human beings. When you realize that you are not here alone, when you realize that there is an eye that is hovering over you for whatever you do, you will be answerable. You become more careful and more alert to the values that God has given us. And in that fear of God, you get to appreciate each other, you get to appreciate work, you get to appreciate greed, the consequences of greed, because greed is what produces stealing, is what produces all these other things we call bribery and corruption. It's produced by greed. When you don't appreciate yourself, and when you don't appreciate the values of work and hard work and earning for yourself what you eat and what you have. So when we put all these things together, you see, we can teach values, but if those values do not have an intrinsic value in you, you'll talk about it, but you'll be the one to break them. We'll talk about it when it is concerning somebody